flowing.
Yeah.
So what part of Australia are you in, by the way?
I'm in Sunshine Coast, which is in Queensland.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Familiar. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Like up a bit north of Brisbane.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's
Yeah.
amazing. I've never been to Australia. I have a friend that moved there, and she
Oh
loved
yeah.
it.
Where'd she move?
I can't remember where because it was so many years back.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe Melbourne?
Yeah.
Maybe?
Okay. Yeah. Melbourne's like sort of like the London of Australia. It's a little like more rainy and
Oh,
cold.
yeah. That's
Yeah.
not
It's like
as
the
fun,
only
huh?
place in Australia that's like that, really, to be honest.
Well, thank you
But
for joining me. I really like what you're doing. I actually came across your page a while back. I think I want to say the end of last year, beginning of this year. And I am a certified personal trainer as well as a yoga instructor.
oh, cool.
I've taken some time off with my business, and so I'm doing a lot of podcasting, and I'm going to kind of relaunch.
Yeah. Right.
And so I was really intrigued by what you do. You seem to be like above and beyond personal trainers that I've seen, just super expert approach to everything. So if you'd like to tell me a little bit about Bodyworkers University and kind of how that got
Yeah.
started.
Well, it's mainly Corrective Culture has been my main business for yeah about 5 6 years now. So that was me and my business partner Jake Stone, and basically that started as an Instagram page really, and it started out of my garage.
Oh, okay.
So and because I initially went down the Czech Institute path. So
Mhm.
my first base was the Czech Institute. Have you heard of Paul Czech's work?
No, I was going to ask you to explain.
Oh, okay. Well, Paul Czech's work, he's I swear he's pretty big in Texas too. I know, like,
Say
the whole
say again.
Paul Czech.
Mm-mm.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Anyway, well, he's an American guy. He owns the Czech Institute. He's now an older man. He's sort of, detached from it. He does his podcast and does other things. He's very much deep into the soul and spirituality and death and stuff now. But growing up, what it was for me was seeing a man that was um, very holistic in the sense of spirituality, but also the movement. Because you get the
Yeah.
people like, you get the gurus, but then they're like overweight or they eat poor food or they don't move their body. And it was just the first time I found someone that I guess I could also relate to as a young man because I was fighting MMA at the time. So I was
Oh,
really in that stage of my life. And all I remember was this first thing where he goes, "Oh, I'm just so thankful for my wife Penny for helping me do all this," and then he started crying, right,
yeah.
in front of everyone, and then he's like, "All right," and then just started teaching like he didn't care. There's no attachment to it, and I was like,
Yeah.
"That's so unique." Um, but then just stories of like, where he'd rehab like Kobe and Michael Jordan and all these other people, and he came to Australia and worked with NRL teams, and so he was sort of known, especially in Australia and New Zealand, of, his rehab approach. But basically because my business partner, Jake, who was my friend, he had a bad back. So he had a spondylolisthesis, which just means his L5 had slipped on his sacrum. So his spine had broken basically.
Oh,
And
yeah.
but slowly and chronically, it wasn't like an acute thing. And
Yeah.
then eventually he was only 19, 20 at the time. He's 37 now. And he was told he could never ride a bodyboard again. And he was like top three bodyboarders in the world. So he was traveling the world bodyboarding. And
Okay.
it was told, "Oh, you got to stop that. You got to get your spine fused." 4 different people said he just got to get his spine fused. And he saw physios, chiros, osteo, everyone, he saw that everyone saw the best back surgeon in Australia, apparently. And uh, yeah, they're like, "Oh, you have to get it fused." And
Yeah.
then he saw a friend of his who's a bodyboarder down in Hawaii who was like, "Oh, go see Paul," but he couldn't see Paul because Paul's expensive and he's in the States. So he
Yeah.
found another Czech practitioner in Sydney. And basically, within a couple of months, he goes, within 2 weeks, I felt it started to get better, which was the first time something got better. And then within 2 months, it was pain free and without this fusion. And then that was 19. So he's 37 now. So he's still being fine. Does jujitsu now. Um, plenty, surfs, bodyboards.
Yeah. So it's lasting. Like it wasn't just kind of a quick fix that was temporary, obviously.
Well, because we were taught like the mechanism a little bit, and it wasn't just the movement; it's diet and everything too. And people don't actually realize that nutrition. I actually think nutrition is almost, and I'm the movement guy, right? I don't even post about
Mhm.
that much, but I believe nutrition is more important almost than the movement in regard to the pain and the inflammation. Because pretty unquantifiable, but it matters. You know, I've seen it before. If someone's inflamed and they're
Yeah,
all
your
like
diet.
puffy, then
Mhm.
their range of motion is decreased. And basically just even just conceptual understanding of like no one even knew what the injury really was. Especially back
Mhm.
then, it was like, oh yeah, you know, it's broken. So therefore, you know, because you think, oh, the spine's broken. Of course, you got to fuse it. What else can you do?
Yeah.
Like your mind would go to there, but then now my mind thinks of anatomy and structures and tension and compression. I see it. The way my brain sees the body is like, almost like an engineer. Like, okay, that connects to that. So if that contracts, it will pull it more this way. And then this is pulling that way. So maybe we've got to take tone out of there. And basically, he just had to start stretching his hip flexors, do some lower abdominal work.
Yeah.
He was drinking Coca-Cola all the time. He cut all that out. And then he just is, you know, because if they're bloating, obviously their core's not going to work, right? So
Right.
there's all these obvious things. Like, that's obvious. You can't draw your core in because it hurts because they're bloating from food all the time. Therefore, we should probably prioritize that because
Yeah.
that's your core and that's supporting your
Right.
back. So there's
Exactly.
a couple of things that are just sort of obvious out there. And if people get too evidence based with it, because things don't exist yet, but there's this obvious things like, um, I saw one the other day with this guy saying it doesn't really matter if someone's got a big rounded upper back and there's no correlation to their neck pain or shoulder pain. And I'm like, all you got to do is make your back rounded and try and put your arm above your head, and you can't, you know?
Oh,
And
yeah.
then you do that 100 times over playing a sport, you're going to wear on that shoulder. So
Mhm.
it's just like there's these obvious things. And it's like, I always think you got to integrate the evidence, but also don't just look at it like reality's not around you because, you know,
Yeah.
those same people in the 60s would tell you there's no evidence smoking causes cancer, but
Mhm.
you know your lungs are designed for air. You know,
Yeah.
so this is happening everywhere a little bit, and you got to
Mhm.
like integrate it, not be too far one way or too far the other. But basically, I got inspired from that, and I had a passion. I didn't know I had a passion for it actually. So I was
Mhm.
scaffolding. I was a
Oh,
scaffolder, full
okay.
tradie, yeah. And
Mhm.
but my father was in the Feldenkrais, so I'm not sure if you heard of Moshe Feldenkrais's work, but it's it's like another modality. I guess the slogan for it is awareness through movement, and it's very
Okay.
brain to body. Like growing up, he would be on the ground, moving all on the ground, doing this stuff, and then he'd like say, "Oh, how many ways can you look over your right shoulder?" Or "How many ways can you look up?" Or we'd look at people at the beach and look at their posture and stuff. He didn't have the anatomy knowledge, but he had the curiosity. And like he called me the other day, and the opening line was, "Could you shrug your shoulders if you didn't have a neck?" And then we like, and then we broke down like the anatomy of it, and so I guess I guess I was doing it my whole life without realizing. So it made me
Yeah.
feel like I got a bit of a head start on everyone else because once I did have an avenue to learn, I I really just absorbed it well. But I didn't want to be a physio because I just wasn't excited by going to university and taping shoulders. And I like some of it, but I didn't want to do
Mhm.
this. I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to learn about like things that I didn't think mattered that much. Plus, locally, I never really got good results, and no one I really know did. Like, it wasn't, you know, a lot. I knew a lot of people. Like Jake was one of them, right? The back stuff. So, but I loved it, but I didn't know there was a career path. And then all of a sudden, I realized, oh, I can do this check stuff, and then that just opened the door for me. And now I've done so like basically, to be honest, I do. I'm not a physio, but I basically just study a lot of physical therapy, and I've done mentorships under physios. And but I don't care what title you are. I just grab whatever from everything and absorb it. And yeah, I put probably just as much money as someone would have into university, into other things. A lot into mentorships, to be honest. So I'd actually
Okay.
work in clinic with them and just they just like me around. And then Diane Lee, I did a mentorship under her. She's a Canadian physio, a really big Canadian physio. And
Mhm.
yeah, I just go down rabbit holes and just. But I've had a unique position because I have a supplement company. So we have the gym. So I have
What is
this.
the name of your supplement company, by the way?
Or it's Corrective Culture. So we
Okay.
have all like, yeah, sups and we sell like movement stuff on there. But I'm in a position where I have a gym and I got this place to test all my theories and
Mhm.
like trial with people. So it's sort of like I got this scientific place where I'm not coupled by the money to the time thing where I have to have them out in the hour. So I'll have someone for an hour and we'd be there for 2, 3 hours sometimes, but they love it because for me, I trial and error everything. And now I've now created a system, which is Bodyworkers that I'm launching, which is really to teach anyone. That's why I call it Bodyworkers. I don't care if you're a personal trainer. Most people in it are probably going to be physios. I think like 250 physios are signed up. But,
Yeah.
you know, there's a lot of
Yeah.
personal trainer. There's osteos, there's yoga, there's Pilates. You just, instead of trying to be in your box, obviously, you're being careful, but you can learn it. You can
Yeah.
learn it, and the yoga practitioner should know. I could teach them a bit of a spondylolisthesis, so then they're aware of that client that probably shouldn't go into deep lumbar extension in their class. And there's little tips that can just make you excel and be so different from everyone else, but conceptual understanding and anatomy. And there's better ways of learning it. My roommate's studying to be a physio, and he comes back and I test him, and he's just forgotten. They passed the test. The next month, he's forgotten what he learned because he's just
Yeah.
trying to pass the test. And I'm watching the way they're learning, and I'm like, this is boring as shit. I'd be bored too. I wouldn't remember it because they're not really learning it like this, trying to memorize everything. And that's not the
Yeah.
way to do it. And I just want to encourage people, like when you're learning anatomy, like I've never once wrote down what they do. I've never once taken notes on, okay, the psoas does this and this, and I know that it is good, but I reckon there's better ways, and that's the way I try and teach. Is more like an image based. Like I imagine there's an image of it, and where do the fibers run, and then you can think of it. So it's more like a language than
Yeah.
a memory.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. You have a very unconventional approach in the way that you teach. Just
Mm,
from what I've seen, as you're kind of getting ready to launch Bodyworkers, and what grabs my attention is the visuals. You give the visual of what is the muscle, what are we looking at? Then you have an
mm,
actual person where you're able to show that same visual, and really break down what's going on. I think the hands-on approach also makes a difference.
cool.
Because again, you're right. When I went to training for certified personal trainer, it's a lot of like, memorize this, get the multiple choice right, and move on. And
Yeah,
so we could sit here and talk about muscles all day, and it's like, wait, what's that? But when
yeah,
I go back and look at yours, at your work, your Instagram, whatever it may be, I'm able to see like, oh, okay, I remember because there's such a animated visual that you provide, and just the
cool.
way
I
that
didn't know that.
you teach. Yeah, 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 absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
I think just having that visual and then showing it like hands on. You also had a video that really caught my attention about like a posterior tilt, which I have.
Mhm.
Believe it or not, I'm a mother of five. And so
Really?
I'm
Yeah.
very thin, but I still have like, it'll look like I have a pooch sometimes because of posture, type things.
Mm,
And so
mm,
there's all these different things in the way that you approach what you're doing that I think is really detailed and really precise, but it's not
mm.
overwhelming or overly complex. And so that's what I love
Yeah.
about it. I also think too, when you mention nutrition, that's very important because I have a background as well in molecular biology and like genetics.
Mm,
And so I look at a lot of epigenetics, and nutrition plays a huge role,
yeah.
especially when you mention like the inflammation. You're not going to be able to do much if you're inflamed. I know for me
Mm.
personally, because I previously suffered from Hashimoto's, I can't work out every day. I have to kind
Mm.
of do it every other day and kind of pace myself because once that inflammation sets in, my muscles are extremely sore. I feel like I got hit by a truck the next day.
Yeah,
so
and that's just
I just,
awareness. Yeah.
yeah, so I just really appreciate your approach. I think it's really unique, and I think it could help a lot of people. And it's obviously done so far. You've caught up
Yeah.
and blown up very quickly.
Well,
I
it's happened
think,
so quickly, yeah. It's
yes,
happened, and it feels like I haven't really, the feeling is like I haven't even really tried, but I have. You
well,
know what I
that's
mean? Like,
also, yeah, the beauty
yeah.
of it because you have a very natural gift, I feel like, as you're
Mm,
doing it. It doesn't look like you're trying, you're not
mm,
performing. And I
mm.
think you can sense that in your work. And so that I think attracts people. And then you get the result of the visibility.
Yeah, well, every video is one take, if it is, unless it's me someone just filming me, and it is the way I'm talking, whether it's to the video or to a client, it's sort of like I don't really care that the camera's there, I guess,
Yeah.
because 'cause I'm more interested in, like, what I'm talking about, and I always just like, say, sometimes I'll have a topic that I won't know, like, I'll have a videographer, and they'll just ask me something, and I'll just go off the top, and, that's the way my brain works, 'cause I otherwise I can't plan what I'm gonna write or talk about the shoulder or whatnot. I'll just sort of go off the top, but and then you can pump them out. It's less stressful, right?
Oh,
But
yeah,
this
and see,
but
I've got my notes here, and I'm the same way, like, I'll make my notes, but we probably won't stick to them. And I tell
yeah,
everyone
yeah.
that because I'm the same way, You just kinda
Yeah.
have to take what you've got, take the confidence with it, and go forward because
Yeah.
otherwise you're kinda picking and planning, and it gets all convoluted.
And
Um
with that information thing too, I just wanna tell, because people like stories, right? We all like to sit around the fire.
Oh, yeah.
That just the one time that really, because some people don't really get that. They like think, "Oh, yeah, like, surely my back isn't related to that." This is early on in my career, but I had a guy. and he had back pain, right? And he was
Mhm.
so tight. And this is a little concept that I'm pretty certain on these days, hey. And it's the area that hurts is moving too much. Okay, so it's just a nice concept to think about. Like,
Yeah.
okay, if your lower back's hurting, that spot means that it's moving micro. Now, somewhere else probably isn't moving enough, and it's making it
Mhm.
move there. But the bottom line is, it can't hurt unless it's moving. Like if someone has frozen shoulder, their shoulder's not moving, but the pain still comes from a little superior glide. Like there's still micro movement happening because other spots aren't moving. And you watch knees, hips, everything. Like someone's hip pain is anterior glide; it moves a little bit most of the time. So you're getting just that concept is really good to think. Okay, why is that moving too much? And what? And usually the hips aren't moving. Okay, so the hip flexors, hip extensors, whatever. There's something around the hip joint is like not allowing it to move. So then if it hits the end range at the hip, it just goes up the chain into the lower back or down the chain to the knees, right?
Okay.
So I had a guy where he was so tight. He was a plumber, a lot of like real bad back pain. He was like, it was really affecting. You could see he was sinking mentally from it, and he had a family and everything, so he had to keep going to work. And I gave him like a stretching and tissue work program, custom upon an assessment. Like, okay, this is tight. He come back in 2 weeks later, nothing had changed, still just as tight. And I was like, what? And he'd been doing it. I believed he'd been doing it. So then uh, we sell a cleanse, right? And
Mhm.
but it wasn't even the cleanse. It was like just basically the cleanse makes you cut out all like beer. He was drinking beer every night. So and just like you cut out just all the stuff that can mess with you early on, all the grains, beers, nuts and seeds, all
Oh
that sort of stuff, you know. And then you bring stuff back in, see how it makes you feel. Just a bit of ownership of your life, right? Um,
yeah.
but anyway, he come back in like 2 weeks later. He'd lost like 8 kilos of just like obviously water weight. He looked
Mhm.
so different, like leaned up. He was like happy, and he had that beer. You know how when someone drinks too much alcohol, they get that red tinge on their face,
Yeah. Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the archetype of the
Mhm.
alcoholic, right? You're going to draw a bit of redness in their face.
Yeah.
And that disappeared. And he's like, man, my back pain's completely gone. Nothing changed but the diet. And then I checked all his range of motion and it had increased by like 20 degrees in some of the spots. And so I have a theory. I haven't seen anything on this, but like just like anything, tension in fascia, you swell it, it tensions everything. It puts it on tension, which then would obviously, it's like a cobweb. It tensions the cobweb and limits range of motion.
Mhm.
So his range of motion increased, but basically that means then the movement will go through his hips and not into his lower back every time he's moving around. Even just minimize that movement. Doesn't There's still going to be movement, but like it's those micro movements that go on for years until they become macro. That's
Mhm.
I'm like really certain on that these days, hey. And so have other people I've seen in the field that have done it 50, 60 years. It's like they're all, whether you word it like that or not, it's really coming down to that. Like I watch someone's I had a girl where her knee would hurt when she walks up a stair. I
Hmm.
was like, "Show me how you walk up a stair," and then her knee just goes into full medial collapse. It just goes in, right? So I
Oh
was
yeah.
like, "All right, if your knee's here, does it not hurt?" And she's like, "No, it's fine there." So it's like the movement she's been doing is been
Yeah.
doing it, but she's been getting away with it for so long until the tissue says no more. And and or maybe that day you sleep worse, or you eat shittier food, or you're moving, or you have going through a breakup, or all these stresses summate into whatever.
Yeah. I'm just so fascinated because it's, just what you mentioned about the girl on the stairs. Um, those movements become a daily pattern. So you don't realize it. And so you're
Mm.
able to bring in an awareness that maybe someone doesn't realize. Because even me, like I don't know if you can tell here, but one of my shoulders goes like this, and it's because I drive and I lean, and
Yeah.
I get like
Yeah.
neck and shoulder back pain. But you wouldn't think of that unless, obviously I know because I'm into movement and so forth. But
Yeah.
I get, pain on the back of my knee, probably because I walk on the outsides of my feet. All of these things that are just my normal movements, and because I'm used to them, I've adapted to it. But you bring
Yeah.
like you, who's able to kind of look at that and point out that awareness. So I think that's really great too. You have something that you mentioned. What did you call it? Um, when you look at movement quality, can you elaborate
Mm.
on that a little bit? Because we talk about fitness, we talk about correct posture, position, and so forth. But when you're mentioning movement quality, what exactly are you referring to? And how do you
Mm.
find that you improve that?
So movement quality, well, firstly, if there's any pain, right, I'll find the movement that is not causing the pain to get the same task done. But usually it's just in respect to physics. So like, okay, that's an example for the knee thing, right? Like if you're God designing the body, and or you're even an engineer to treat it like an engineer designing the body, well, it doesn't make sense for that to happen. You wouldn't have planned that to happen each time because the joint says it's a hinge joint. It wants to go forward and back. Doesn't really want to go medial. It can go medial. It can do things like this, but not every time you take a step. You
Right.
know, it can do it sometimes. Like everything's got a bit of adaptation to it. But if you do it every time, the body will adapt. It's like uh, in the Dowager's hump on the back of the neck. Like over time, the body's just putting down connective tissue there because it's supporting the weight of the head. Like you've never seen that on someone's head that's straight.
Yeah.
You've only seen it on a head that's gliding forward. And there is cortisol things and things that can adapt to it. But the bottom line is the head's forward, so the body's saying, all right, but let's put some passive tissue here. Same with bunions. It's always like the back foot in a surfer has the bunion most of the time because it's the foot they pronate on. So it's that big sort of callus on the mid side. The body's just adapting. So movement quality, this is where I guess my dad's stuff came into it a lot, is generally you can feel it, right? But what I bring awareness to is, okay, what feels good? Like, let's try the different things and where feels like the least stress on the area. And at the start, your brain's fatiguing thinking about it all. But in a relatively short amount of time, it does start to change the way you move without realizing. And I bring awareness, like, say someone's got a massive anterior tilt and their
Yeah.
whole lower abdominals are sticking out, right?
Mhm.
Well, yes, you gotta bring active stiffness to the lower abdominals, right? Because physics says I would like the rib cage to be stacked on top of the pelvis. I'd rather it not to be like this and those back ribs is cutting into my lower back. Okay.
Exactly.
Or the ribs is flaring at the front. Um, it's not even great for like the diaphragm pushing down all the organs, right? Because it pushes down, it pushes it forward into the abdominal wall, like separating it instead of down to the pelvic floor. So movement quality, it is hard because it's what feels good, but sometimes if I see something that I think looks better physics wise with stresses, I'll guide them towards that and get them to feel it and see if it feels better for them. And a lot of the time it does. They're like, oh, that does feel better. And most of the time I tell people to bring their mind's eye to their lumbar spine because that's usually where a lot of the issues are happening, depending if they've got a knee issue or whatnot, right? But most of my clients I see are back pain and
Yeah.
shoulder pain. But I'll say, okay, like say we're doing an exercise, like let's say you're doing a Bulgarian split squat, right? You're doing like
Mhm.
and I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, what does it feel like when your curve is there compared to there? And there's always a sweet spot. And the sweet spot usually is orthopedic norm, which is about the thickness of your hand roughly, or about there in the lumbar curve. You don't want it dead flat either, because
Yeah.
then you can't rotate. Right?
Okay.
Um,
Interesting.
or s Yeah, and if you're dead flat, you'll find that, yeah, you can't rotate through the hips, you can't rotate at all. Like, this lumbar spine's not meant to rotate too much, but it definitely can't rotate when it's like that because it
Yeah.
tensions all the ligaments at the back too much, right?
Yeah. So you're kind of having a backwards effect. You're not. Yeah.
Yeah, and if you go
Yeah.
too much curved, well, it just obviously compresses those facets, those bones at the back, but also all the ligaments then have too much slack, and then you're gonna get more shear. Right? Because
Yeah.
you got to have some tension in those ligaments to stop the shear. So it's like a fine line. Some people just go all ligamental. They just hang off ligaments, right? They don't use any muscle, which is that's what a kyphosis would be, right? Where the upper back's just hanging off their thoracic spine. And some
Okay.
people go too far the other way, where they're just using all the muscles. They got a huge anterior tilt of the lumbar erectors, and then the ligaments then have slack in them, and then you're going to get more shear. The shearing is when those get those spondylolisthesis, like JCAD, my business partner, because it
Hmm.
shears, right? So it moves forward and back, and then it can break. Yeah. So
So then, oh, go ahead.
yeah. Oh, and then basically, like, then you're just looking at it conceptually around that, like, all right, well, and then like hydration, if they're dehydrated, the disc drops, and then you're going to get more shear again. It's like someone has a disc bulge. You know, when someone gets a disc bulge, they get instabilities after that because then there's no tension anymore because the disc has dropped. Same as if you're dehydrated, the disc drops. You can get people that drink water and their pain goes away. It's like on the spot. They just don't realize they're never drinking water. I had a guy that was cutting weight for a fight, 5 kilos of water weight. It's a lot while he
Yeah.
slept that night, and then his disc blew in his neck while he slept because he was just so dehydrated. So how do you quantify that? You know,
Yeah.
but
And
it's
it's like
but it
you said,
exists.
it's the reality around you. It's common sense, but people don't always think about it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and sometimes if you get them to drink, within 10 minutes their pain disappears, and they're like, "Whoa, I didn't know that," and they're just having
Wow.
like 4 coffees a day and not drinking water.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
I'm a
it
little
exists.
guilty with my energy drink, but yeah.
Yeah, it's
um,
alright.
so then with that being said, what do you when you look at strength versus balance, do you find that one's more important than the other, or does it depend on the person? Obviously, I mean, everything has to be personalized. We know
Y
this, but
yeah.
um, I feel like there's a fine line between strength and balance, and sometimes they may get interchanged when you might actually need the other rather
Yeah,
than.
definitely, definitely. So the way to think of it is relative stiffness. Think of it as stiffness, right? So the bigger the muscle, the stiffer it is. Okay, so when you hypertrophy a muscle, it creates stiffness. All right, and when you do things to muscle, stretching it, foam rolling it, it makes it a bit more pliable and takes away a bit of stiffness, right? So also when you shorten the muscle for extended periods of time, it increases stiffness. Like if you have your hamstrings bent for sitting on a chair behind the knee for 8 hours a day, your hamstrings will shorten at the knee, right? Because they've done it with rats where they just get their feet and they cast them up and then they lose the muscle length over time. So it really is based upon a bit of a clinical assessment because you got to think what like back to evolution, back to primal. I'm always thinking that. Hence why I made all those bodywork slides, sort of that look,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
It's like, what are we designed to do? It's not too much or too little, right? So there's no bodybuilders back in those times,
yeah,
and I know strength work is good, right? And they say it's one of the healthiest things ever, and it is. But also, bodybuilders generally, when they're 40 or 50, they're just wrecked, and that's
yeah,
just the reality of it. And if you see it, they always got back pain and like crippling issues. Not all of them, but most of them, right?
yep,
So it's this relative stiffness that's gone on unchecked and in one area and at the expense of another because it's pretty hard to balance the body if you're trying to do a push pull and leg and things go out of whack, like one day you might not even be using the muscle you think you're using. um I see actually a lot of shoulder depression. I find a lot with these bodybuilder types where they've just done so much lats and elevate depression, pull ups, all that sort of stuff, which is fine, but it depresses, and then at the expense of the antagonist, which is the elevators, which is the upper trapezius. Now, sometimes people get the upper traps, but that's meant to elevate against that sort of stuff. So let's look at the case of someone with an anterior tilt, because I reckon a lot of your listeners, that's a common thing. A lot of women have this. They don't
hmm
want it, especially postnatal, right?
yeah,
So basically, if you look at an anterior tilt, it's the stiffness of the hip flexors and the stiffness of the lumbar erectors are overcoming the stiffness of the lower abdominals and the glutes and hamstrings. So the lower abdominals pull the pubis up, right, which tucks the tail under,
okay,
okay? And then the glutes and hamstrings pull the back of the pelvis down, like a steering wheel, sort of.
got it.
So lower
Okay,
abdominals pull up, glutes pull down at the back, and together that creates posterior tilt.
yeah,
Now, the hip flexors anteriorly tilt the pelvis because they pull the pelvis down towards the ground, which then stretches the lower abdominals, right? And then it also shortens the lumbar rectus. So the lumbar rectors will pull the back of the pelvis up, and the hip flexors will pull the front of the pelvis down, which is that
yeah,
steering wheel effect, right? So
hmm
they're like almost two antagonistic relationships. You got, exactly. So if someone's got anterior tilt, we know there's a shortness in the lumbar rectors, there's a shortness in the hip flexors, and then there's length in the lower abdominals, and there's length in the glutes and the hamstrings.
okay,
So for that sort of thing, you're going to be thinking, all right, well, you know how like there's a reverse hyper machine where you do the lower, that machine where you like face down, you're raising your legs up and down, and you really
yes,
strengthen the lumbar rectors. Well, that doesn't make sense for the person with an anterior tilt, does it? Because they're
right.
already in there. You're
You're
just pulling
adding,
them, you're
yeah,
just putting them all there, and it's
hmm
sort of not rocket science, is it? You're just taking them away from where they are or
yeah,
taking towards where they are. And
right,
yeah, the anatomy does it, but that's the way to think of it. So, but it's really relative stiffness. So don't always think short. I used to think, okay, this is tight, that's long, or this is tight, that's weak. It's more that the stiffness of one is overcoming the stiffness of the other.
mm,
Okay, so you can have lower abdominals that are all stretched out and that the hip flexors aren't even tight. It's that the lower abdominals that are so weak that there's just no stiffness there and it's allowing the tension of the hip flexors to pull it down.
would that be
Okay.
something you would see like in a case of diastasis recti, maybe?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay, okay,
yeah. And then, but you would assess it because they could have tight hip flexors too, right? Because usually over time, if it's been there for a long period of time, or the
mhm,
shortness that it adapts to the shortness. So
Yeah.
then you do need to do something about it. But I test it. I'll lay them on the table, test their hip flexors, and like, oh, there's no tightness there, but you're still on a huge anterior tilt, which tells me there's this no stiffness in the lower abdominals.
Yeah.
And and if you had stiffness in the lower abdominals, it means when your leg went back, running into extension, it would stretch it every time because the lower abdominals are holding it, and it will give it the stretch. If it doesn't, if it gives every time, well, then the hip flexors are never getting their full range because it's just shortening and it's just pulling it back down. So that's the sort of a relative stiffness. Like, okay, back to the bodybuilder thing, their lats get so developed and it pulls the shoulders down. So the stiffness of the depressors are overcoming the stiffness of the elevators, which would be the upper trapezius.
Mm.
Or the
Okay.
opposite. You get a girl that's like this,
Yeah.
and then the stiffness of a upper trapezius is overcoming the stiffness of the depressors. And this is
Mhm.
where I tell people then, okay, this is where the clinical knowledge comes into play. You just got to know, okay, what are the depressors? What are the elevators? What are the protractors? What are the retractors? What anterior lateral? And if you know all that, then you
Mhm.
start to see how you just come up with an exercise program and a stretch program if they need it.
Yeah.
And don't even think strengthen, just think I'm going to stiffen this area and
Mhm.
take away stiffness in that area. That's sort of a nice way to think about it that simplifies. And knowing that when you hypertrophy a muscle, it increases stiffness. You have to bring awareness to that. So you got to actively tell that lady to contract her abdominals, and she'll be like, "Well, I got to think about doing this all day." And I'll be like, "For a little bit, yeah," but
Yeah.
then it starts to happen itself, and then the passive stiffness from the hypertrophy starts to do it for you.
Yeah. That's a
So it is
beautiful
nice.
way to describe it. You've got it
Yeah.
really you've got a gift with this.
Yeah.
I really think too with like your father, like you said, and kind of growing up with it in the background and then it's kind of coming forward.
Yeah, if
Um,
you met my dad, you'd understand. He's like a hippie, unique type, you know? Yeah.
the best kind of people.
Yeah.
I think it's really unique because, like you said, you've got one stiffness overcoming the other. Most people don't think of it in those terms. And
Mm.
so then something that I was going to bring up too is I don't know if you're familiar with yin yoga.
I might have done it. I'm not sure, but yeah.
Yeah, so yin yoga is more of holding those deep poses for like 3 to 5 minutes each, and it's
Okay.
basically
Yeah.
deep stretching.
Yeah.
And there's different poses that do different things, but of course, with yoga, you want to adjust accordingly
Mm.
because in the situations like you just described, if there's someone who has too much of something or too little of something, or they're too tight here, then some of those poses are not going to benefit them. They're going to work against
Mm.
them. Um,
Mm.
so that's something that I think is really helpful, and it ties into what you talked about with tension and the fascia. Can you
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about that and stretching and the hydration and everything that goes into that and how that can affect movement as well?
Yeah, well, let's talk on those long. When I think about changing posture, let's
Okay.
think about besides the relative stiffness and how you're talking about that, how these long holds. I think long holds, because I'm sure there's an active contraction happening with a lot of them too. Is there like, or is
Mhm.
it? Yeah.
So like you'll have a pigeon pose. You've got
Yep.
your hand, your right leg is straightened, your left leg is up forward, up to your chest, you lay down. Um,
Yep.
and you'll hold.
And like there'll be certain little like lunge thing. Well, I'm big on time and attention in regard to, well, at least when we're talking about the contraction uh, of of the muscle, because, well, there's, do you know tonic fibers and phasic fibers?
I don't.
Okay, so, well, it's
Educate
basically
me.
type
I love to
1.
learn.
Yeah, it's like type 1, type 2A, type 2B. So type 1 is that slow twitch fiber, right? Endurance fibers. Type 2A is like 8 to 12 reps, sort of like strength, right? That most people are training that. And then type
Mhm.
2B is power, that like fast twitch. Okay. So if you look at most people's gym programs, right? It's
Mhm.
type 2A and type 2B, basically the 8 to 12 reps, because that's going to put on the big muscle mass, going to
Mhm.
get it quicker to failure, right? And then some people do the power, but a lot of people are actually probably just doing 8 to 12 reps, a lot of things. And it's not about the reps, it's about the time and attention. So, uh, you know, that's like a bodybuilder rep range, and most people would say,
Mhm.
right? It's very rare that people get time and attention. When I think of time and attention, I'm talking about 3 minutes of time and attention. Okay. And what that means is it hits type 1 fiber and hits endurance fiber.
Mhm.
And what is posture? It's endurance, basically. right, for
Yeah.
a long period of time.
Yeah.
And it's tonic fibers. So they call them tonic fibers because they hold tone, which is another way of saying those endurance fibers. And then phasic fibers, which are those other sort of 8 to 12 rep ones, uh, phase on and off. They fatigue quicker. They give more power. They're faster twitch, but they fatigue quick. You can't do it as long, right? But
Okay.
the endurance ones you can. So you'll get people that just train, and every muscle has a combination of it, right? But
Right.
some muscles have more tonic than other, like postural
Mhm.
muscles, um, generally have more tonic fibers, right? So if we think about holding tone, they're also, if you cut down the muscle and pull it apart, they're deeper in the joint. They're always deeper. So those
Mhm.
faster ones are more superficial, and the tonic ones are deeper to the joint, which means closer to the axis of rotation, which means they're stabilizers, right? They're made to stabilize the body. So I had an example. I had this his bodybuilder type guy come and see me, right? And I actually always test people's endurance and their back extensors. So it's called a Sorensen's test. So you just lay
Mhm.
them. There's a million ways you can do it, but you can lay them on the ground, get them to an extension, and there's time, and you see where they're at. Because you don't know. Like sometimes they're really good and they look the same as that person. He lasts. You're trying to get about 3 to 4 minutes, right, as the norm, and he lasted like 30 seconds or something, And I do 4 minutes, and
Yeah.
I get people up to that often, I'll get
Mhm.
50, 60-year-old women up to that. Women actually have more tonic fibers, so they're better at this end usually.
Mhm.
Um, just like slower twitch. And so basically they're the ones that will start hanging off their passive system. So this is active. Active means the muscle, right?
Okay.
And then passive means fascia, connective tissue,
Right.
ligaments, stuff you can't control so much. So he these are the people that when they have no endurance, so then after could be even an hour walking, or could be 10 minutes of standing there, they start hanging off their body. They don't realize they're doing it, but you watch them do it.
Yeah.
The tired mum will hang off the outside of her glute medius on her hip.
Mhm.
Some people just hang off their lower cervical extensors. Some people will hang off their thoracic extensors. Some people will they'll hang off their lower abdominals. So the
Oh, yeah.
anterior tilters will hang
Okay.
forward off the lower abdominals, and you get the posterior tilters that will tuck under and hang off the
Yeah.
lumbar erectors, right?
Okay. Interesting.
Okay. And really they're hanging off the ligaments there. Okay. The
Mhm.
muscles are also getting stretched, but the ligaments are getting stretched. And those ligaments over time get laxity. So they found with ligaments, right? You stretch them for long enough, they get lax, right?
Mhm.
If it's sustained stretch. And most people are sitting in the Western world, so their lumbar spine's in flexion already. You go jump on a plane, your back's flat for 8 hours. It's like it doesn't feel great. But then they do that, then maybe they go and they're the person in that yoga class that shouldn't do that deep forward bend in their lower back because they're already stretching it all day long. And
Yeah.
then I had a girl that had the flattest lower back, and then she went to a class in the Jefferson curls, which is would be good for someone with an anterior tilt, right? Because they're all compressed and short through there. But she was
Mhm.
already flat. So while she did this Jefferson curl, her disc just blew, and then she had a disc bulge for the next 3 months. And
Wow.
because if you go into flexion, if you forward bend, that pressurizes the front of the disc, which push like water between it, right? So
Yeah.
it pushes.
Just mhm.
Yeah. And you can get away with it until you don't. Like I
Yeah.
said, it could be a stressful day, dehydrated. You get a bit of usually happens with that and twisting. It's like
Mhm.
tensioning it and then like ripping the paper almost.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that just tells me like when you want to change that sort of stuff, like you have to hit time and attention. This is a nice rule of thumb that I use.
Mhm.
Whatever the exercise is, I get them to 3 minutes of time and attention, and they can't rest for longer than 20 to 30 seconds to get there.
Mhm.
So they have to. Let's say they're doing a back extension. They can't do the 3 minutes. I'll get them to do a minute, rest for 30 seconds. Minute, rest for 30 seconds. Another minute. Right. Next time they do a minute and a half, rest for 30 seconds. Minute and a half, and then eventually they might do 2 minutes, rest for 30 seconds. Do a minute, and then eventually I'll get them. Okay, can you do 3 minutes now? Oh, I can, and you'll be amazed how quickly it can happen. Because really, that's like them doubling their endurance in their tissue. They don't even realize. It also does hypertrophy muscles, but hypertrophies are deep muscles that are deeper to the joint. That you're not going to hurt yourself doing that stuff, and it feels you got to feel it. People don't. It's all words until you feel it. Like you do a long endurance hold in your thoracic extensors. You get up. You're like, God, I feel like I feel so good and upright. I'm not even thinking about it because basically what's happened is for a short term, you pump the muscle up. It's almost act as if it's hypertrophied because it's got a pump in it, and then that will stiffen the area and pull you into the stiffness that we want, right? But then obviously, after an hour it goes down and it goes back a bit. But then oh, I'll keep doing that. It'll slowly hypertrophy. I'll also have the endurance in the tissue, and then the passive stiffness of it will then hold me there, as well as I'll be able to handle endurance. And it just feels amazing. I've just seen it. I've seen crazy stuff with I like working with the people that no one else can help. That's what I like. I like the
Yeah.
challenge, where it's like
Yeah.
it's a 2-hour assessment minimum. I'm with them for 2 hours assessing their body.
Oh,
So
really? I wasn't
yeah.
aware of that. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so the way I work is a 2-hour assessment. Sometimes I'm there for longer, and I go head to toe. They'll see me for a shoulder. I'll still be looking at the hips. Um, and I'll do a full range of motion assessment on their body, and I have it all written down. So I know left
Mhm.
quad 120 degrees, right quad 100 degrees. Wonder what that does. Is their pelvis twisted? Oh, it is. Oh, it's twisted to the side of the tight side. What happens if I stretch it or do something? Let's see. So I've had a lot of testing, and
Mhm.
since I got the numbers, it gives you a nicer picture of the tension because I can see,
Yeah.
well, that obviously is 30 degrees tighter. And I look at the major things that pop out. Like I'm like, whoa, that is way tighter than that side. And that's the side of the sore knee. Does the pain go away when we stretch that? Does the pain go away when we contract the antagonist? Is the antagonist weak? Usually if one thing's really tight, you got to check the antagonist of it because it's usually getting pulled long. And you just
Yeah.
start, then you start to see the patterns. And then
Yes.
I start to find all these patterns I'm like, oh, this is always happening. And then do you know Shirley Salmon?
No.
You would love
Educate
Shirley
me.
Salmon.
Shirley Saunders.
She's from Washington, I believe. She's at 89. Now, imagine being 89, still working in the field. You got to listen to whatever she has to say. She's got wisdom to share, you know? She
Okay.
was doing it when polio was around.
Wow.
So she's where I got this sort of relative stiffness idea. And I've grabbed bits and pieces from everyone and my own stuff. Um,
Yeah.
but uh, she was the thing that really saw the same pattern I saw. So I was seeing this pattern, right? You know, the TFL muscle?
Yes. Hmm.
Okay, a lot of like people have tight TFLs, right? A lot of women too, I find.
Hmm.
You'll find the TFL is one of the most problematic muscles in the lower body. It just messes with so many things, okay? And it's a hip abductor, so it's on the side of the hip, right?
Hmm.
So it's sort of near the glute medius, so side glutes.
Yeah.
I
It's
had a
that one is to make sure it's that
Yeah.
it's like a thinner muscle that's kind of almost right.
It's like front pockets.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
so the way you
Making sure
remember
I'm
it's like
thinking.
sort of on your front pocket is
Yeah.
where it runs, and it runs into the IT band, so it's on that angle.
Okay.
Okay. So it literally runs into the IT band. When I think of anything IT band issues, I straight away think TFL. Because if you look at the anatomy, it literally just goes into it and then it
Next.
pulls
Yeah.
on the IT band. Yeah. And then the IT band crosses the knee, then it pulls on the side of the knee and they get knee pain from it. Right.
Yeah.
So I've had people where they just roll out their IT band, the knee pain goes away.
Yeah.
Now I think that's just the band aid still. You got to wonder why it's tightening up. And this is why I'm teaching on body workers because I reckon there's truth in it. When you look at it, the muscles, think, okay, agonist, antagonist, synergists, and
Hmm.
neutralizers. Okay, so the agonist is like the main character of the movie, the thing that does it. So the
Hmm.
thing we're talking about, if we're talking about hip abduction, right?
Yeah.
The agonist is the glute medius, right? Because it
Right.
abducts the hip. The middle fiber is the glute medius because it pulls the femur away from the midline, right? Which really means it stops your knee collapsing in when you're walking and whatnot.
Right.
Now, the antagonists was the things that do the opposite. So that'd be
That
the
help.
adductors, right?
Right. Hmm.
Or of the joint action you're referencing. So internal, external rotation, right? So then there's synergist, which means that help it. Now, I think the synergist is a bit of gold because if you find a muscle that's constantly tightening up, what you can do is look towards the synergist that help it and see if they're not helping it. And the pattern that I've found massively for the hip and lower back is that the TFL abducts the hip, right?
Yeah.
But so does the glute medius abducts the hip. Okay.
Okay.
The, Now the problem with the TFL is it's also an internal rotator and a flexor.
Oh,
Okay, the
yeah.
glute medius doesn't do that, right? The back fibers of glute medius are antagonistic to it. It externally rotates it. Okay, so they're they're sort of synergistic in their abduction, but antagonistic in their secondary joint actions, right?
Yeah.
So what you'll find, and this is a really good pattern, right? That the side of the tight TFL will have the weak glute medius. Because when I do their
Mhm.
side lying tests and I'll try and push their leg down, it's super weak, right?
Yeah.
And they've been using their TFL to abduct. and they don't know because they're still doing the task. They don't know.
Right.
But then
Right.
you test it, and the TFL is extremely painful when you press on it, but also the glute's so weak. And it's more about strengthening the glute than just releasing the TFL. Okay. So
Uh,
you still release the TFL, but I'll tie it with the strengthening of the glute medius. And it's just a pattern that's crazy because the TFL internally rotates, which means it pulls the femur in. It's a hip
mhm.
flexor, so it's going to contribute to anterior tilt. And it's the biggest thing that'll rotate the pelvis.
Yeah.
So if you see a pelvis that's twisted to the right, you're going to think right TFL tight most of the
Mhm.
time, right? Because it's on the angle to do that. And also, and this is a bit of clinical gem that took me years to figure out, and now it's like I taught a workshop the other day. I filmed it actually, so I'll probably upload this. Um, and and it's cool because I'm just a dude, right? And a whole clinic from South Australia flew the whole physical therapy clinic to learn from me, and
Yeah.
shows your passion really outweighs anything else. You can,
Yeah.
and yeah,
Yeah.
it's like
Because
it
you
does.
saying I'm just a dude, you got something going here
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
very unique and special. So
yeah.
yeah.
Well, it's just like I dream about it and stuff. It's like,
Yeah.
but but basically, when you get hip hikes,
Mhm, mhm.
so one hip higher than the other, everyone wants to fix that.
Yeah.
And I didn't know for ages. I used to think the QL all the time is pulling the hip up, but
Okay.
most of the time it's the TFL pulling the hip down. So it's weird when you look at things, chicken or the egg. It's like, oh, I used to see that as that hip's high, but it's not. That hip is actually down.
See it. Yeah, I love that because that's how I think with genetics because so many things play into so many other things, but there is it's like a root cause, because you can have
Yeah.
these symptoms and that symptom, and then you think it's this, but it's really the other thing that's underlying that, like you said. So the micro movement that is maybe
Yeah.
contributing to the symptom that looks like it's your shoulder, but maybe it's something,
Yeah.
I'm not as
Exactly.
as much
Yeah.
of an
Yeah.
expert
Yeah.
as I don't have the words for it, but
Yeah.
and that's kind of like what I do with genetics, which is why I find it so fascinating because I think that is the best way to personalize your approach and to really get the right answer. And that's what makes you an expert. A lot of people
Yeah.
look at symptoms or they just look at, oh, it's probably that. And they're going off of old science or all of these things. And there's so much more to it. Like you said, nutrition. I also want to get into talking about how your spiritual, mental, emotional
Mm,
state can affect movement, your body, tension, all of
mm.
that. In your experience, what have you seen with that?
Oh, for sure. Like even, I mean, you'll get people that just cry when you release a muscle. They
Yeah.
didn't know what's going on.
Yeah.
Um, they're just like,
I've seen that.
so, so it's one of those things. I remember my dad said to me, he goes, "It's both, right?" Because he goes, "Do you smile because you're happy, or are you happy because you smile?" And I was like,
Your
"There's
dad's
both."
that guy, huh? With all
Yeah,
his little riddles.
yeah, yeah. So basically, there's truth in that, right? Because you can get a guy that's kyphotic, non-confident, won't go up and talk to a woman, that he's interested
Yeah.
in, uh, maybe a little bit overweight, right? Let's say
Yeah.
he starts going to the gym and starts getting stronger, then all of a sudden his aura changes with him and, stands a bit taller, he's maybe starting to see his abs. That will change his psyche too, right?
Yeah.
Um, also, uh, yeah, if someone is afraid of the world, it's like the apes. We're just gorillas wearing clothes. So it's like they're gonna be like this. And you probably don't know because I guess my story is unique. I actually went to prison years ago. Do you know
Oh
that?
yeah, share that if you don't mind. I didn't know,
Okay.
but
Okay.
that's
Well,
so funny. I just have to throw this in here. I'm big into astrology. I don't know if you've seen that or not. And
uh,
one of my placements draws me to people who've been to prison. So that's very interesting.
all right.
That's a whole
Yeah.
pattern thing on my end. But go ahead.
Okay. Yeah. So when I was like 21, I got caught with MDMA, just party stage in my life, right? But I
Uh,
got caught with getting a lot of them for us going to a festival,
mhm.
and it's very big. It was big in Australian culture, especially then. I feel like Australia's a big, like I think it's the biggest cocaine country in the world
Okay.
for
Mhm.
taking, right? It's
Yeah.
crazy,
My
right?
ex was a cocaine dealer, believe it or not.
Yeah,
Anyways.
yeah, yeah. And but I just got caught, and they would just watch me go to this guy's house and they grabbed me and everyone that went there. I didn't think I was going to go to jail. Like I hid it from my family. I went to court that day, thought I was good, sentenced me to 2.5 years. I said I served 7 months of it
Mhm.
and in maximum, and it was just a huge shock, like, and very out of character for me too. Like I wasn't like a bad kid. I was just,
Wrong
it was the
place, wrong
same thing. It
time.
was just, I didn't know. Yeah, you're a
Yeah.
kid. Like you look back in the way you were thinking then. I was like, what was
Mhm.
I thinking? But it was just opportunity, And I was like, oh, this is the opportunity. I didn't even take them that much. That's the thing. But yeah, anyway. So I did 7 months, but that was a really good example. I did a talk, local speech here, and I spoke about posture and how to change it. But I was talking about that because I watched a guy come into the unit, and he was in kyphosis, and I didn't know as much then. I was sort of dabbling into the curiosity of that stuff, but I didn't know anything. But I saw how he became a target immediately because of his posture, and I was like, "This is amazing. We are gorillas. Like, we forget posture affects you
Yeah.
more than the biomechanics. It's more like
Mhm.
than the way you shake someone's hand, all these little things, but business, confidence.
Yeah.
I was in Thailand recently, and we're watching this woman walked in, right? And she wasn't like a supermodel or anything, but we were like, man, look how attractive she is from the way she walks. Me and my friend were talking about it. We're like, we don't know nothing about her, but the way she walks makes her look so much more attractive. Why? Why does that matter? You know, there must be an evolution reason for survival or something. Like there's a reason for all this stuff, right? Um, I saw a girl walking on the beach, and I think it's not. We learn to move from our parents, but I think it doesn't have to be our genetic parents. I think it's whoever's around you at the time
Yeah.
growing up. So I watched. I was at a beach near here, and there was a girl that looked like I don't know if they were like one was adopted, but one was like basically Argentinian looking. The other one was like quite paler skin. I think they were tourists
Mhm.
from like South America or something, right? And I was like, they were about 50 meters apart on the beach. And I was like, look at those two girls. They walk the same. And I was like, I reckon they know each other, right? And then
Yeah.
I saw them, they walked, and then they met each other. And then I watched them walk up and their parents, well, you know, maybe there was one of their parents or not, but they walked the same. And then I watched how they walked like their parents. And I was like, whoa, like that's where we learn it from. Like
Mhm.
you learn to walk. And sometimes people have learnt wrong because their parents walk wrong. And I do believe there is optimal ways of moving. And I know people say, oh, don't get fear of movement, but don't attach fear to it. Attach it's fun. It's fun moving better. It's fun learning new ways to do things. And when it feels good, it makes you feel powerful. And like I had a girl yesterday, one of my clients, her back pain is after about 3Ks, her back starts to hurt when she walks,
Mhm.
right? She had hip pain. Her hip pain's gone now, but her back starts to hurt. So knowing that rule of the area that hurts is moving too much. I go, show me how you walk. And I got a slow mo video and I watched her walk. Whenever her right leg goes forward, the whole spine just shears. Left leg, it doesn't really.
Mhm.
The right leg just moves. It
Mhm.
just moves.
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, well, we need to stop doing that. I need to bring awareness to it, but we also need to stiffen the muscles that will stop that, which will mainly be the external obliques. So I go, okay, do this lower abdominal stiffening exercise, like just a leg raise, you know, but
Yeah.
stiffening the obliques, and then bring the awareness to what we just contracted then. Because what I do sometimes, I just sort of made this up, but I'll I'll pump a muscle up in a isolated way so that when they go do the movement, they already sort of feel it fatigued, but they can connect to it.
Okay. Yeah.
They're like, oh, okay, that's already fatigued. I can connect to it now, and then
Mhm.
they can just bring their brain to it and then walk and then immediately stop the motion. So I'm like, all right, she's going to message me this week. I go, I want you to go for a 3K walk this week. I want you to do that and let me know if the pain's gone during that. And then you look at the things that would, if there's any tension in the hips, that would rotate it quicker. So you go down that path, but
Yeah.
you also narrow in on, okay, I'll still do an exercise program based around stiffening this, but I'll still got to bring awareness to the motion, right? Now, I don't know how I got into that, but bottom line is posture and if
It's
someone's tired, you know, the fatigued mum that's got, you know, you got 5 kids, you would
yeah.
know when you're just tired, like you want to hang off your body because
Oh
you're tired.
yeah. When I'm tired, this is what you're getting.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah,
Um,
same.
so I think it's really special, like you said, you don't know how you got on that, but it's very spiritual, the awareness. I think that's so relevant because it's almost like a foundational piece because you're almost you're a healer, I guess you could say.
Mm,
I don't know if
mm,
that's the right term I want to use because when you bring that awareness there, we do that in yoga, you know, when you're trying to focus on the muscle in yin yoga. And for me, for example, I have very tight hamstrings. I don't know how I'm
mm,
flexible everywhere else.
mm,
But I have to breathe into the muscle. I have to identify where that pain is and breathe
mm,
into it. And so I think just awareness in itself when it comes to the body and movement and certain parts of your body is such a big piece. And
mm,
a lot of personal trainers or whatever they may be, chiropractors, whatever, no one's bringing that awareness first. And so then
Yeah.
I think you're stunting the healing, or you're not helping anyone get results or continued results because they're not fully aware of what's going on. You're just like, let me pop you, let me have you do this exercise and go on about your day. So I think that awareness is actually a bigger part of it than people might look at it as. Uh,
Oh, I mean, it's my dad's slogan through Feldenkrais, awareness through movement. And I think even from a marketing perspective, it really sets you apart. Like if you can make them feel what you're talking about and
Mhm.
they get sort of hooked, eh? Like I get people, they see me for a bit of back pain and then they're just obsessed with wanting to be better. And
Yeah,
because they get out of pain, then they're like, all right, now let's build a tank on top of it. Let's get strong. And
yeah,
and then let's make like and then you cater to like what they want. Like, okay, like do you want to move well for the rest of your life? Like you don't want to be a bodybuilder, but you want to move well, you want to be able to walk up the steps of Rome, you want to be able to, like you can do it. I've seen examples of people and it's just respecting your body, respecting what you've been given on this earth, whatever you want to call it, God, source, all that sort of stuff.
mhm,
It's like this is the goal, right, for body workers. And this is what I feel like I is my sole purpose. And
mhm.
it's a lot of work, but it's like we go get our teeth checked, we go get our skin checked. Why do we not get our body checked? I think it's crazy. But
Yeah.
like, but who do you go to? You can't go to a physio. You can't because they're waiting for the pain. Like you can't. It's not a thing for some reason.
Mhm.
So we should be able to go somewhere from birth to death practitioners. Like even as a child, I can tell if they got a retroverted femur or anteverted femur, which means the bone's shaped like that. So I know, oh, okay, if this person plays that sport, just be aware, okay, if they got a retroverted femur like a lot of men have, I do, they can't internally rotate the hip because the joint doesn't allow it. They'll never get there. There's no pain attached to it, but if they start trying to force it, there will be.
Yeah.
So, okay, when you play golf, turn your foot out a little bit, which I know breaks the rules of golf, but it'll save your
Mhm.
hip. So then you'll have more internal rotation range before it hits the end range. Or
Mhm.
the woman that has an anteverted femur, they can't externally rotate the hip, so they externally rotate from their tibia. So then you
Yeah.
just got to bring awareness, like, hey, just be aware of this because this is happening. So it makes you move in a certain way to stop you wearing and tearing on things. Um, it's we should be able to get your body checked even like once a year and say, oh, look at that right glute medius is so much weaker than the left. Let's do a little program to correct that, or not even do a program. Let's just make sure we tell your personal trainer, oh, this person should probably not do this exercise too much because she's already developed this, but she should probably move more towards these. Do whatever ones you want, but have the idea of contracting that area.
Yeah.
I was working with a lady that had just worked with a functional patterns practitioner
Mhm.
and the guy, all credit to him, he didn't know, but he was giving her all these back extensions, which most people need, right? Most people will
Yeah.
have kyphotic. This girl, he couldn't see her spine, her back was so hypertrophied. You know, when you get, I'm not sure if you've seen it before, but where their lumbar erectors are so big that they've closed over the spinal space and you can't even touch
Oh,
the spine
yeah.
anymore.
Absolutely. And it dips in.
Yeah, it
So
dips
just
in. So,
yeah.
so that they're big for a reason. It means she's using them. So these are the people that when they bend over, they just use their lumbar erectors and they stand up. They don't use their glutes. I actually test everyone's forward bend now, and I see the way they're what's happening. I'm seeing, okay, are the hamstrings holding the pelvis down, flexing the lumbar spine too much? Are they just all hips, and when they come up, they just use their lumbar erectors. They don't actually use their glutes, like this lady
Mhm.
did. And then she'd been given back extension, which hypertrophied anymore. And those fibers run vertical. So it's just compressing the whole area. And she was just
Yeah.
getting back pain, right? So these are the people that, okay, you need to take away the stiffness definitely in that area, not do more
Mhm.
stiffness there.
Yeah.
Which, if she could just see someone every 6 months and that person can just do a full body assessment and then they can do the program for them if they want, that will just the goal is so people when they're 80, 90 can move well still
Mhm.
and utilize this life without having to just be like this and because they start getting all kyphotic, they lose rotation, they start swinging their arms really hard when they go for a walk because they're not rotating. You see just weird things start to happen. They start waddling,
Yeah.
that happens. It doesn't
The
happen
people that
overnight.
shuffle,
Yeah, they
they're
shuffle.
shuffling. Yeah.
But if there's a
That's so
system in
beautiful.
place,
I think that's an amazing purpose because we are, like you said, we're here to live. And if you can't move comfortably and you're in pain day to day or once a week even, you're
mm,
not able to fully live, and you're not going to be emotionally well. I don't care,
yeah,
how in shape you might be, bodybuilder or whatever. If you're tense, if your body is just not moving the way it should, you're not going to be emotionally well at your best. And so how are you living
Yeah.
life to the fullest?
And
So
just
I
the
just
primal standard of a bit of strength. Like, okay, what do we had to move around, we ran down some animals, we did movement every day, we did a bit of squatting, bit of hinging, bit of dancing, just like a bit, not too much, not too little, right?
yeah,
But, and I'm always like wondering, why are these imbalances coming on everyone? Like, why do a lot of people have weak side glutes? Why do a lot of people have weak upper trapezius? I find these patterns. Why do a lot of people have weak, lower like fibers of serratus anterior? And I'm like, oh, okay, whenever you walk on one leg, that's glute medius. If you're going to like, go stalk an animal right now and you're going to try and like creep on it on one leg, your glute medius is on the whole time. If you do everything on two legs, you just don't ever hit it because it doesn't need to work. The glute medius's job is to keep one leg, like hold the pelvis level while the one leg's on the ground. If the glute medius is weak, the pelvis will drop and then we'll go into a hip hike. Okay. So then if it goes into the hip hike, the spine goes into a side bend. Then if the spine goes into a side bend, then that person goes to go a CrossFit class with a side bend in their spine and it's compressing that bend. Well, they generally get a lateral disc bulge. It's just like
yeah,
usually I can predict like, if they got a disc bulge going out to the left, usually the left left hip is higher. Sorry, right. If they got a disc bulge going out to the right, usually the left hip is higher. Because if you were to think about it, the spine side bends to the left. It's like the toothpaste analogy before. It's like doing this, so it pushes the disc out that
okay,
way to
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
side.
That makes
Yeah.
sense. 'Cause-
And
yeah,
then I get into forward bend, right? It hurts their back. I level their pelvis off, forward bend, and the pain goes away. So we know, oh, that's the path we got to go down. We got to level your pelvis off because obviously this is a player in that. So, and upper trapezius, that's carrying something by your side, carrying shopping bags by your side, carrying water by your side back in the day, but carrying it by your side without letting it just hang off the neck. A
yeah,
little bit of tension, a little bit of something there, so it's not just hanging off
mhm,
the neck. Because you'll get people that have neck pain and they can't bend their head, but their shoulders are just dropped. So it's like if you're sitting here or listening to this right now and you try and side bend your head left and right, and then just pull your shoulders down and then do the same thing, well, you're cooked, right? And then you go to the untrained, therapist, and they'll tell you to stretch it, but it's already taut. It's not tight. It's long.
yeah,
So you'll never be able to stretch that away, right? And then it just destabilizes the neck. So you strengthen the upper trapezius, all of a sudden your neck feels free, and it suspends the shoulder girdle off your lower back. It looks better. It frees up your rotation. But then you get the extremes of people that are too high too.
mhm,
So like I said, it's relative stiffness.
yeah. It's holding a lot of tension in the body. You find that people's shoulders are up to their ears. Um, there was something I was going to ask you, and it just slipped my mind. Um, It'll come back to me, but I do have another
Mhm.
question.
Mhm.
What is one of the most common ailments, I guess you could call it, that you find when it comes to someone who's got muscle tension somewhere, like migraines, or like what
Mm.
do you see? What's one of the most common symptoms that you find? And
Okay.
then what is one of the most like fascinating results that you've seen when it comes to your work as far as working with a client? Like one of the more
Cool. Cool.
mind-blowing situations.
Okay. Well, there was an early on client. Okay, so we'll talk about the client next, but the first thing was the big pattern that you're talking about migraines. I find, like I said before, upper trapezius weakness is
Mhm.
because it gets tight
Yeah.
and you can almost press on it and create the headache sometimes.
Yeah,
But I
I get the
find that tight, yeah, that tightening up will is there for a reason, right? And it usually needs to get strengthened. A lot of the time too, they'll have a flat collarbone. So your collarbone, I'm not sure if you can see mine.
do I have a flat? I don't know.
Nah, you have a bit of an angle. You have a bit of an angle. The outside should be high. I mean, to be honest, maybe a little bit on that one, if that's
One
your
side, yeah, that's what I
yeah,
thought.
yeah. Because it should be about 15 degrees roughly, right? So when it's flat, I mean the outside's lower than either flat or sometimes the outside's lower than the inside. So then it
Ah,
just jams the SC joint up and it messes with their SC joint here. But more importantly, all the nerves that feed the arm run under that collarbone.
mhm,
So the brachial plexus, so the tingling to the fingers, that sort of stuff, uh, is common on the flat collarbone side. Okay. So, and then this is what I mean about the way I'll teach is like, okay, well, the collarbone's flat. Therefore, we need to lift the other side up. Muscles only pull, they only shorten. So to me to lift it up, it has to be above it. Can't push it up. So it can't be anything below it, right? So it's got to be a muscle above it. Oh, what connects to the outside to lift it up? Oh, the upper trapezius is above it, connects to the outside. It connects to the lateral part of the clavicle and the spine of the scapula. So
Yeah.
it makes a lot of sense to contract that. And this is why it's so not rocket science is if you just do it,
Yeah.
it's doing it anyway. But I know that, but it's just doing it will do it, right? But then time and attention, I don't mean like heavy, get big traps. I mean, like I'm talking like a 1 to 2 kilogram dumbbell, which is like, what's that? Let's say a 2 kilogram dumbbell, which is like 1.5 pounds or something, you know?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I don't know, but yeah.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah, lightweight, right? And then
Yeah.
I actually do it. I put my arms out a little bit, so I don't do it straight down my side. I put it out because it takes away the levator scapula, which is another muscle that helps it. So that takes away
I'm
the
looking at myself and practicing. Yeah.
yeah. And then the cue I imagine is I'm pulling my shoulders more out, away from my up and away from my ears, not towards my ears, which I can't obviously do that, but that's just the feeling you get. So you're sort of just doing this slow and then down and then slow. And you'll be interested to see if the side of the flat collarbone feels weaker once you hit fatigue. And I just do those, 3 sets of 15 or so, that'd get roughly, um, you're just trying to get 3 minutes of time and attention is a good rule of thumb. So if you're doing a 3-1-3 tempo or 2-1-2 tempo, 2 seconds up, 1 second hold, 2 seconds down, that's 5 seconds. 5 times 10 is 50. So if you do 12 reps, yeah, 12 reps. That should wait 5 times. Yeah. So that will hit the 3 minutes of roughly 3 minutes of time and attention, right? I just get a bit over it. So that's a really common one for the migraines,
Mhm.
and deep cervical flexors here because people get suboccipital migraines too, the base of their neck. So the eyes always stay level. So if the head goes forward, the eyes have to stay level. So it's going to stay short through there. Otherwise, you're going to be looking at the ground. So just the eyes will overrule everything. So you got to make sure I get a big, large ball through there and clean that out because that will be short to fight against my deep cervical flexors. So I
Oh,
need to take away a bit of stiffness there and stiffen these guys to lengthen that. And remembering that if we go holistically in it, well, the rib cage is the platform for the neck. So the rib cage is in kyphosis, the head will glide forward, and that will all be secondary off the rib cage.
that is
Okay.
so interesting. Because I worked remote for a long time for a law office, and
Mm.
I would get such bad neck pain, and just like you described, the migraines up here, it's because
Mm.
I sat like this all day,
Yeah,
at the
it's a short.
computer. And so it's
Yeah.
like, anyway, that makes so much
Yeah,
sense.
deep. So what I actually tell people with the computer people to do is get a bit of gravity. I sort of lean back and then do the chin tuck. Because
Ah,
see how like gravity wants it to go this way. So now
yeah,
has a force to fight against. But then the time and attention of that. So I'd do 3 minutes. I'd do three 1 minutes or two 1.5 minute sets. Or if you can handle 1 3 minute set, that's fine. And just and then you feel it. You stop and then you're like, oh, it feels like it's sort of staying there. Um,
yeah. I
um,
love this. I wish you weren't in Australia at the moment. Like, I would do this all day. This is amazing.
I'll come to the States eventually. Um, but And then a story, there's so many, right? But the one that really stands out was so I had this is a cool story because when I used to scaffold, my boss I worked hard for him. So he didn't want to lose me, but he let me take a day off work and do clients because he let me do the career change. So I
Right.
didn't have to do the financial jump,
Oh, that's nice.
right?
Yeah.
And really, scaffolding is looking at tension and compression. So I'm seeing the way it was built. Um, but anyway, his daughter ended up having like some form of like stroke. What they unsure, I believe it was that, and she lost feeling to her legs. She was incontinent, and basically she was in a wheelchair for about 2 months, and then when she saw me, she was sort of like looked like almost cerebral palsy, like sort of walking
Mhm.
like waddling but barely, had to sit down over and over. And he worked with the whole so basically the team of physios and everyone at this hospital, like in the typical medical system, were like, "Oh, you may not walk right again. We don't really know." Uh, all this sort of, basically we don't know. They were trying to give her lunges and trying to get her moving, but she like couldn't even barely move, right? And I could see when she came in, this is when I was in the garage too. This is
Oh,
before I
okay.
was even full
Yeah.
professional. I got a gym and everything now, right? But this is early days. And he called me. He's like, "Man," he goes, "I've been to everyone. Like, do you reckon you can take a look at her?" And to be honest, way out of my scope at the time, right? Way out of my like,
Yeah.
um, but I I know I was passionate and I wasn't going to do anything crazy, right? So they go, she come in with her mum. They're like, yeah, I got thick blood, so they've told me I got thick blood. Um, and I was like, thick blood. And I was like, I went over, there was no ChatGPT at the time. So I Googled, I was like, is your blood volume thicker when you're dehydrated? And
Oh,
it
yeah.
does. And then I asked her, I was like, do you drink water? And she's like, oh, nah, maybe a glass a day. Sometimes I don't, like no water,
Mhm.
which is to me, I'm like, your body's made of water. What do you mean? Like you're
Yeah.
not drinking water. We're still matter. We're still under the sun. We're still drying out. Our fascia, everything.
Mhm.
Um, and then I checked that because okay, so in Bodyworkers, what I do is I break down the meaningful task. So say you came and see me and you're like, I need to be able to lift my arm above my head. It hurts when I grab a glass. So
Mhm.
that's the meaningful task. And my whole thing, because my thing is pain, I want to get people out of pain. So I'm like, all right, that's the meaningful task. So in my head, I break down, okay, what has to happen for you to lift your arm up? Well, you need the antagonist length, you need lats in the you need length in the triceps, lats, uh, teres major, you need anterior deltoids working there. You need the clavicular fibers of pec major to give length, and the subclavius. You need the collarbone to rotate posteriorly. You need the rhomboids to give length. You need scapular upward
Amazing.
rotation. You need the rib cage to be sitting there. Like I could go that down the rabbit hole, but I
Yeah.
would. I would. I can do it quick now, but that's what I do, right? Um, so you can go deep just in that task, right? And then I look
Mhm.
at hey, so then I free up all the things that could limit it. And I've seen this work so many times too, where that was like, they were so happy with that. But anyway, the meaningful task for her was walking, right? So I think of the body. There's a famous model in Punjabi's model. It's called it's like active, passive, and neural. So active means muscles, passive means connective tissue and ligaments, and neural means the brain to body connection of that, right? So if someone's done their ACL, their passive system is gone. So you need to support them with the active and the neural while also holistically supporting the passive system, which would be a collagen or something, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Right.
and really training the others to support it while it heals. So her neural system was gone, right? Her brain to body connection was gone. So I
Right.
had to really, and Feldenkrais, which is my dad's stuff,
Mhm.
is all brain, it's made for that. It's all brain to body stuff, which is so weird. It's the first time I ever had to use my dad's stuff. And you know what? I hated Feldenkrais growing up because it was like a religion. I just constantly hear it and
Yeah.
I was like, shut up. I didn't care about it. But obviously I did in the end. It was just boring to me at the time, but it must have been somehow absorbing in my
Right.
psyche.
Funny how life
Um,
works like that sometimes. Yeah.
so I gave her this exercise that really ties gait, but like laying down, like brain to body. And then I checked her rotation and she could rotate about 10 degrees. That's how locked up in the rib cage she was. Walking is rotation. The legs go forward and back and the rib cage turns.
Mhm.
Where that's why we run the world, by the way, is because we run. We started running. Other animals can't run like we can. There's no other animal on earth that runs as good as humans. Do you know that? Isn't that amazing?
Yeah.
We
I
can
never
outrun a
thought of that,
horse.
but yeah, that makes so much sense. I would never have thought about that if you not brought it up.
Yeah, well, and it's we outrun a horse over distance. I mean, I wouldn't, but like, my
Yeah.
primal version of me, like,
Yeah.
look at ultra marathon runners. Like, no animal runs like that can go as far as they can. Because we can sweat but mainly we twist in the rib cage. They don't do that. They have to push against the ground and land, push against the ground. So they
Right.
fatigue. We hop
Mhm.
and twist. So we get free energy from that. It's like it's
Yeah.
not even us pushing us through. It's like the stretch of our fascia just rotating us through with a little
Yeah.
foot hop, and that's why we can outrun every animal over distance. Um, so basically, it's fundamental in evolution. You need to be able to rotate. So I gave her some rotational stuff, and I just got her drinking water. She hadn't drank water. I was like, okay, this you got to start drinking water. I have a video somewhere. It's the most amazing video. Um, and she basically walked in 2 weeks later with like 80% better. She had still a little bit of a foot limp, but that went away over the
Mhm.
next month. But I'm talking before that, there was no progress. Literally immediately, as soon as she started just drinking water, um, and just doing some of this stuff, and also what I think it was I believed she was gonna get better, and I was naive and young, and I was like, "No, we can do so much." Like, I really picked her energy up. She was a broken girl when she saw me, like, she was really broken, and then she opened up to me about, emotional stuff that had happened when she was a child. So, like, she was
Mhm.
sexually assaulted as a child from a family member, brought all that
Yeah.
out, you know? So, she had endometriosis, that whole womb area was shut down, that whole first root chakra area was shut down, and so yeah, she he thanked me. She came good. We started training, got to end up doing like movements, and now she's good. And that was the first time I was like, oh, where I started to trust myself, but not myself. I trusted the work. I was like, oh, I get it now. Like she had thick blood, but no one asked if she drank water.
Yeah.
There's a full medical system there, professionals, right? You're made of
Mhm.
water. Think about all the things that happen when you're dehydrated that you can't quantify. And no one asked her that she drank water with thick blood and she had a blood clot in the lumbar spine. So it's like these little things, these little like basic
Yeah.
things and just concepts really worked. And then also just using relative stiffness models, like I said before, were like, I got heaps of photos, but I had a girl drive like 5 hours to see me. She was crying when she arrived because her back hurt so much from driving. Driving was a meaningful task, basically, and she couldn't put her arms above her head. So her thing was she just couldn't put her arms above her head, and it hurt when she did that, and she just had back pain all the time. So then it was lumbar, and what I now do, another tip, is I diagnose the movement instead of the tissue. So,
Mhm.
okay, it hurt when she extended, so therefore she has a lumbar extension syndrome, pain, whatever you want to call it. I don't care if it's a spondy or whatever. If it's a L5S1 disc bulge, I call it lumbar flexion pain. So I then start making everything around that. Okay, it's extending, it's hurting when she's doing that. Why is it hurting? Why is it moving too much there and not somewhere else enough? And then you just break down the anatomy. So she couldn't put her arms above her head. And all I just did was went to the antagonists and released them with some soft tissue work. And I showed her how to do it with the ball. And then she could put her arms above her head. And she was mind blown because she'd been given wall angels and strength work to try and get it there. And it was a full fascia thing. And then her story was she's a rower. So she develops her lats too much. She got into the physio and they were giving her more rows, which is an internal rotator anyway. But the lats, um, was so developed that she couldn't, that's the antagonist. If you do this, the
Yeah.
opposite of this. So
Right. Yeah.
she couldn't put her arms above her head because these were so stiff. So therefore she'd cheat and stick her ass out, extend to the
Mhm.
lumbar spine and move the lower back. And I knew it was that because when I had it on the table, I'd move a bend her knee to contract stretch her quad, and her lower back would move and it would hurt. So then I hopped the
Fascinating.
sacrum, moved the leg, and the lower back stopped hurting. So I know, okay, it's the movement there. We need to
Yeah.
do something about that. So basically, we just contracted her lower abdominals, contracted her multifidus, which is the muscle in the lower back. I'm not sure if you know about that, but
I
very
don't.
important. It's a very overlooked muscle.
Mhm.
It stabilizes the lumbar spine, and it's super overlooked. And I find it's a big missing link in a lot of people's,
Where
especially
is that muscle?
it runs up literally the whole valley of each side of the spine. It's the deepest
Oh,
one. So
okay.
it's below all the lumbar erectors.
Mhm.
But it atrophies on with pain and it turns off and doesn't turn back on for some people. And it gets fatty. Sometimes the body puts fat in it, probably to
Mhm.
create passive stiffness. And so I literally just pumped it up. And I find for SI joint pain, it's a really big player. If I'm not
Mhm.
sure, you may, because if you're in that yoga Pilates world, you'll find a lot of women have SI joint pain, and
Yeah.
that's a big thing. That's like I find that. So for her, it pretty well was. We did that, and she messaged me. She got home. She's like, I can lift my arms above my head still, and I had no pain driving. So
Mhm.
thankful, and it was cool. It makes you feel good. It's
Yeah, it's
like
gotta be gratifying, for both
yeah,
parties. Yeah.
yeah. It's like the work paying off after years of like, and now I see the body a bit differently with a bit more confidence of like I can see the people that see it and don't see it yet. Because I remember the way I used to think. So I remember when I was looking for the answer for everything. But now it's more like if someone tells me something's good for something or bad for something, I hold judgment. I look at it and it's like, does this make sense with anatomy? Does this make sense? Or are you just saying it? You know?
Yeah.
Because I can see when someone's sort of put in the work and the knowledge of anatomy. And I don't feel like there's people who have way more deep anatomy knowledge than me, but um, I think that's a very important base to have because
Yeah.
it gives you an idea of what's going on under the skin and you can start testing things and trialing things. And that's the way in Bodyworkers University, I'm teaching anatomy first. And then I just got client sessions filmed because what I found is a lot of people talk about stuff, but I never see it. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to prove it. I'm going to get someone in. I'm going to film the entire session and I'm going to show you. And for them to work with me now, it's got to be filmed. So,
Yeah.
um, because
That's
it's like
awesome.
it adds and they love it anyway. So it's like, yeah, it's an actual database. So I got people like this person's in pain now, they're not in pain. Here's the proof.
Yeah.
Um, compared to just talking about stuff.
Yeah, I think it's really beautiful because it's a blend. It's kind of like what you talked about in the beginning. It's very different and it's unconventional because it is a blend of you have to have critical thinking and the intuition,
Mm. Yeah.
and being well versed obviously in what you do. But it just really resonates with me too because I'm big into like let's blend the science and the soul because there's so
Mm.
much to it. Even with the story that you gave about the girl who, she couldn't barely move
Mm.
and she had the sexual assault and all of that. There's a lot of trauma informed things that happen with the body too. And so
Oh,
like
yeah.
even me with yoga, I do like trauma informed yoga because there's so much there. And so then there's that release like you talk about. And so I just really appreciate the way that you approach the awareness for
Mm.
the body and how there's such a um there is a solution, there is a fix and it's not a quick fix. It's not a someone told me this, we're treating the symptom. I feel like it's really deep.
Yeah.
And I'm just really fascinated by it all. We're
Ye
cutting close to the end. So I wanted
Yep.
to um do just a quick little like actually let's see, did I put that on here? I didn't
Mhm.
put it on here. I was gonna do a rapid fire with you, but I didn't
Mhm.
put it on here in my
That's
notes.
alright.
Um, but I do want to thank you for being here. I really appreciate you spending time to talk with me.
No, it's
I hope
fun.
maybe in the future we can reconnect. And
Mhm.
I would love, because I'm so fascinated by your work, maybe we
Mm.
could do something where we talk about a specific part of it all,
Yeah.
because we're talking about the work as a whole right now. But I think it's really great. And if you want to share where people can find you and connect with you, and if they want to learn more.
Yeah, so just Bodyworkers University on Instagram and then Corrective Culture on Instagram. So Corrective Culture sort of shows a bit of the body stuff and life, like food, because we all eat, like we're on that organic lifestyle and,
Yes.
seasonal eating and rotational eating
Oh,
um
awesome. I love
and
that.
yeah, that's where I started, and then, Bodyworkers University is I just made that on the side because I just wanted one that was purely about the body that I could teach stuff that the corrective culture crowd doesn't care so much about the anatomy of the scapula, but I do. So, I'm like, "Alright, let's just do it and make a niche," and it just hit, like, it grabbed so quick. I was
Oh,
at, like
yeah.
it got, like, 50,000 followers in a couple of months. I was like, "Whoa," just from doing those Canvas slides
Yeah, just,
and some carousels.
between the time I first reached out to you, I think you went up to, like, 70K, and I was like, "Oh my gosh."
Yeah,
So,
yeah, and I'm
amazing.
like, I'm glad because they take me like 6 hours, some of them,
Yeah.
but I go back, I was like, "Yeah, this would be good to know if I first got into the field and, all the sort of new grad physios and whatnot, or even people that have done it for a while." I've found that there's people that have done the work for 20, 30 years and still the passion hasn't been there, and they've just done the same thing for 20, 30 years, and there's people that, like, passion beats discipline every time. I'm certain of that now because it just is so true, like, I get curious and I wonder, I inquire always, and I even told that girl yesterday, for the walking thing, I was like, "Make sure you don't humor me. Like, I need to know, like, if it didn't work, let me know,
Oh, yeah.
Don't tell me, 'Oh, it feels good,' like, just because you like me. Like, no, I need the truth.
Yeah,
'Cause I'll get better at the craft, and my goal is to just be so good at the craft where I know I'm meant to teach it now, but I'll still always learn it. I'm always gonna be a student, and I'll always be
yeah,
a teacher and uh and just that balance between the two. But now with Bodyworkers University, the thing that my soul was asking for was because my income comes from supplements, so I didn't have the need to do clients anymore. But I was like, but I'm good at it and I should. How can I do it but still get a financial incentive? So you need that. So I was like, oh, if I do a community, I teach others, then I have an incentive to just learn forever and teach and never stop doing clients because it means I'll be able to film it and add it to the community. So it was just so right, and the universe is like, "Yeah, that's what you're meant to do. Keep doing that. Keep doing
absolutely. I was
that."
gonna say, obviously, you're in alignment because look what came from it, When you
Yeah.
follow your passion and you really feel that pull and you go with it,
Oh, it's
the
always
universe will
right.
show you.
Paul said years ago, I heard this in a podcast and it changed my life, and he goes, "Look with your eyes and ears, but let your heart be your compass." And since I've used that term, like letting your heart be your compass, it's insane how accurate and always right it is. And what that is to me is usually a vibration around here of yeah, do that. Don't do that. Oh, and there's a soul connection drill you can do where you ask yourself, what does it feel like when you say no to me, or your soul? And
Oh,
what does it
yeah.
feel like when you say yes to me? And then you practice it. And you do it with
Mhm.
the small things. Do I want
Yeah,
chicken or fish? Do I want kale or spinach? Should I train or should I roll out? Because
yeah,
sometimes it's easy for me to train, but it's harder for me to not train sometimes.
yeah.
Like, I go to jiu-jitsu all the time, and I've done that for 14 years, and some nights I'm like, I'm tired. I should foam roll, but I really want to go train. And I'm like, no, no, okay. Because then you go train, then you get sick. And it's
Yeah.
just like, it's always right. It's always right.
Yeah, it's amazing. I just had this conversation with a friend earlier today about intuition and trusting it. And it's like, you just have to have the courage to go with what you feel, and we were talking
Mm,
about, well, what does it feel like? And we described, for me, I'll feel a tingling and, I can get really weird. But I'll have
mm.
like the tingling in my head and my stomach and my fingers and my toes and my knees and all of these different things that I had to learn about myself over time. And you trust that intuition, you go that direction, and the world shows you that was it, that wasn't it, and you start to learn your intuition and trust that
It's
compass a little.
always right. It's like how many people are in relationships with someone that they know they're not meant to be with, but they're afraid of being alone.
Oh, yeah.
So they just stay in it, you know?
Right.
And their heart told them 2 years ago, and eventually the universe will force it apart with more pain, but
Yeah.
it can be done earlier if you listen sooner.
Yeah, because I don't believe that there's a consequence to following your intuition. I think a lot of people end up with fear because they feel like, well, what's going to happen and what if I do this thing and it's wrong? But if you
Mm,
trust yourself and you do that thing, the world, like the universe, is going to reward you.
yeah.
And so I don't think it's something to be fearful of. I think you just get to enjoy life in full when you do that. So
Yeah, it's nice when you can trust yourself.
yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's a good feeling. Alright, thanks for having me on, I really appreciate it. That was great.
Yeah.
You too,
Right.
bye.